In accordance with the requirements of New Jersey statutes regarding open public meetings, notice of this meeting was legally advertised in the Courier Post and the South Jersey Times and posted in the bulletin board in the municipal building. Fire exits are located through the double doors to your left and right. Please silence all mobile devices and stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Here.
Mr. Longfellow?
Here.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Fazio?
Here.
Mayor Gattinelli?
Here.
Mr. Platt?
Here.
And Mr. Gonter?
Here.
And we'll start with some mayor proclamations. I'd pass it on to you.
Could we wait on that? Because I
Yeah.
believe the recipients, we're still waiting for somebody to come. They may be here at 7:30, so could we move on to other
Yeah,
business?
well, just let us know. We'll stop. Move on to the bill list. This is approval for the bill list, August 23rd, 2017. Do you have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes, abstain to Fazio. Approval of the regular meeting minutes, July 12th, 2017. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Recuse.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Approval of executive session meeting minutes, July 12th, 2017. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Recuse.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Recuse.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Approval of regular meeting minutes, July 26th, 2017. Do you have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Recuse.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Move on to ordinance. Ordinance 22, 2017. This is an ordinance of the Township of Washington providing the authorization to contract a third-party payroll service, including electronic oh, man, it's going to be a rough night. Disbursement control. This ordinance is up for adoption, and we need to open motion to open to the public. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Voice vote.
All five here, say aye.
Aye.
Everyone in favor? Aye. We're now open to the public on ordinance 22. If anyone wants to speak on this ordinance only, please come up.
Need a motion to close public portion?
And motion to close.
Make that motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion for adoption.
Motion to adopt now, sir.
Motion to adopt ordinance 22.
Make that motion.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ordinance 23, 2017, ordinance extending the commercial industrial zone designating to encompass the entire property known as Block 86, Lot 1.02. This ordinance is up for adoption. Motion to open to the public.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're now open to the public on ordinance 23.
Good evening. Rick Eckert, Block 86.04, Lot 14, 25 Renfield Drive. Just a couple comments on this that seems maybe sort of obvious to me, but I'll put them out there anyway. If you look at the zoning map and you look at this tiny little piece of CI that somehow ended up in this area, it seems really bizarre. When you look at the surrounding area, look at the surrounding zoning and the surrounding use, it seems to me to double down on bizarre and make that entire lot CI and increase the intensity of the use. versus what's around it is just inviting trouble. I mean, it's sort of spot zoning at its best. But take that a step further, the real issue to me, and as a lot of you know from my history, look at the water situation. You've got a township well that's maybe several hundred feet from this property at the back end towards behind the property that's behind it. You're also in a situation here where it's the part of town that, you know, we draw a lot of our water from. 25% of the town's water is drawn from that general area. And a lot of the wells down there, most of them, in fact, pull from the Cohansey Aquifer. The aquifer is very shallow. It's unconfined, meaning there's no rock protection, there's nothing around it. It's like a giant sponge, okay? Any spill that occurs close to or in that area gets in the water supply pretty fast and requires remediation that is expensive, costly, and difficult. And if you understand anything about the town's water supply, water here is a tenuous commodity. There's a reason we still have odd even in the summer. And I can take you back to an experience we had here maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. We had a well that we had to take offline because there was contamination. I think that well's back online with a stripper now, an air stripper, but was off for a period of time. When that occurred, there was a second well that was already down for maintenance, routine maintenance. And as luck would have it, a third well went down at the same time with a pump failure. Now, if you've ever seen the pumps on these things, you know, this is not something you run down to Home Depot and buy a replacement. These things are significant. You don't keep them in inventory. There's not one in the storage shed somewhere. You don't just pop a new one in. You got to order it. I'm sure you've seen these, Nick, probably. And they take a few weeks to get in. At that time, the MUA came out and said, look, folks, we got a few weeks here that is really kind of a little bit scary. If we have any kind of an incident with another well or a spill or something we have to deal with, we have a water emergency. I mean, it was that close. So I think those guys all sort of sweated bullets for several weeks until that part came in and they could resolve that issue. Fortunately, nothing else happened and we got past it. But you know, it's a difficult situation that we already face in this town. And again, the reason we still go odd even every year in the summer is because it is a tenuous commodity here. So doing anything to increase the intensity of zoning, particularly to CI, which I think is the second most intense land use designation we have in this town, in an area like that where it really doesn't belong, and in an area like that where we've got the water situation, seems to me to really be something you should pause and consider. And that's what I would ask you to do. I understand, I think the Environmental Commission sent a letter on to you guys sort of expressing some of the same concerns. So maybe at the very least, you consider tabling this thing so that you can engage the community, engage the MUA, figure out what the issues really are. I'd really encourage you just not to do it. Thank you.
Good evening, members of council. It's working. My name is Victoria Benetti. I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Commission this evening, just in the nick of time. Sorry. I'm here also to express the concerns and objections of the Environmental Commission to the change in zone designation for Block 186, Lot 102, from the mixed rural and commercial industrial zone districts to an entirely commercial industrial zone. As has already been stated, this particular parcel falls within Tier 1 of the Wellhead Protection Area for well number 19, which means, and this tier designation has been actually developed by the state. It is not something we had done locally. Pollutants introduced on or under the ground within that area will reach the wellhead within 2 years. The township's public water system operated by the MUA is not immune from contamination. You may not be aware that 2 of our wells, in fact, had been taken offline because of contamination in the past by solvents, one being PCE, or perchloroethylene, the other being TCP, trichloropropane, until aeration devices could be installed to remove the contaminants. Luckily, the MUA secured grants from the New Jersey Spill Fund to cover the cost of those treatment enhancements. I don't know the cost of both of them, but I believe the one for PCE was about $500,000. The point is that once contamination occurs, it's expensive, it's difficult, and it's costly to clean up or to secure an alternate source of water. Protecting our water supply involves the practice of risk management. We identify potential sources of risk, and then we seek to minimize them or to prevent them altogether. And that, we think, is the prudent option here. It makes sense from the perspectives of protecting the health of our water supply, the health of our public, and the health of our economy. I am providing a copy of a letter that the Environmental Commission has previously sent to the Zoning Board of Adjustment when an application for the zoning interpretation that is in question here came before the Zoning Board. And the purpose of that request was to secure the interpretation that the parcel should be considered to be commercial industrial, despite the current official zone map. And that zone map indicates that not only does the property include both zone designations, but in fact, I believe that the rural zone is the larger portion of the property, and the commercial industrial zone is the smaller portion. If part of the motivation of making this change is to remove split zone designations, then it would seem reasonable to make this entirely rural, and also reasonable and more consistent with the surrounding zone designations, being rural and residential. And I request that this be put into the record for this hearing.
We'll mark that letter as exhibit. What's the date of the letter, Vicki?
November 7th, 2016.
We'll mark that as exhibit P1.
I would also like to note
This one you need, Joe.
You're done.
that particular application that I think prompted what is being discussed this evening, though I can't say for certain, that sought the construction of a gas station on that property. And that clearly is a high-risk operation with respect to groundwater protection and groundwater safety. And if I may, I will just read briefly from the letter that I have provided. Basically, there would be significant consequences of any accidental or undiscovered releases that could contaminate drinking water supplies for Washington Township residents, businesses, and other customers of the MUA. These potential consequences include health concerns related to contaminants affecting drinking water supplies, financial burdens for the costs of additional water treatment and/or development of alternative sources of drinking water, and economic impacts for customers who may lose confidence in the reliability and safety of their water supply. These surely constitute substantial detriment to the public good. I would also like to point out that we are no stranger to contamination from underground storage tanks, if that in fact is the situation that is prompting this consideration. One of our wells, well, let's say there is a gas station within 200 feet of the parcel that experienced leakages some 15 or more years ago, which is still under remediation today. We have suffered the largest underground spill in the state when the two tanks at the New Jersey Transit bus depot leaked. And that was not a failure of the tank. That was a failure of valves and detection of the leak, which emptied both tanks before the leak was discovered, and contaminated surface water supplies, streams, Grenlock Lake, and Blackwood Lake. I'd also just like to point out, my last point is that the commercial industrial zone district includes a great variety of uses, as the title of the district describes. These include permitted accessory and conditional uses listed in the code, ranging from things like indoor storage facilities to metal processing and experimental laboratories. If the zone is changed, those are all uses by right for that property. Furthermore, the district includes permitted, conditional, or accessory uses in the highway commercial district. Permitted uses could include any sort of retail enterprise, from department stores to drugstores, government offices, libraries, medical and business offices, dance studios, etc.
Hey, Vicky, you can come back up. Let's see if anybody else wants to speak, all right?
Okay, but I just would like to point out that there are conditional uses also in the highway commercial zone. So all of those uses are entitled by right if such a change is made. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Please come up.
Good evening. My name is Mark McCormand, MCORMOND. I'm a partner in Legacy Assets. We are real estate developers. We are the equitable owners to the property in question. Just by way of history, we are here tonight because of what I would, in my opinion, is an arbitrary and capricious lawsuit filed against ourselves and also your zoning board by a neighboring property owner in order to try and stave off the development of the property. Yes, as the lady that just testified said, for the proposed use of a Royal Farms gas and convenience store. This matter was before your zoning board probably 10, 12 weeks ago. Your zoning board affirmed what we presented our case and was opposed vigorously also by our adversary at the time in the presence of your board with their attorney and professionals and other experts. We presented a case that ultimately your board saw fit to approve the extension of the line, of the CI line, based on what was possibly a tracing error when the last map was drawn. And there's a lot of history to it. We put a good case on, I thought. Your board agreed with us. Subsequent to that, Washington Petroleum, which trades as Riggins Oil across the street, filed a suit at the Superior Court appealing the decision of your zoning board, suing Legacy Assets along with Washington Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. We are here tonight. This ordinance is in front of you to try to amend the tracing error that was made many years ago. There was another application that predated us where your board 6 or 8 years ago approved the site totally in the CI zone. So also I would present to you that if this is approved tonight, we will now have to go back to your zoning board for site plan approval, okay? And at that time, yes, in fact, the property is in the wellhead protection zone. We will have to give testimony as to what our plans are. Your experts will be here, environmental and professional and legal, in order to protect the interest of the neighboring property owners, the public in general at that time. So we will be subject to those, to the law at that time. Just trying to think what else. Sir, I did not get your name.
Sir,
Sir.
you have to address all your comments
Yeah,
to council.
this gentleman here, I was asking what his name was.
The first speaker, that's fine, but you address your comments.
Okay.
We don't go back and forth. This
Okay,
is not a
I
cross-examination.
apologize.
Is that all you have, sir?
I'm wondering if I could ask this gentleman that
No,
previous.
okay.
Okay.
It's not
Okay. All right,
cross-examination.
that's all I have for the moment. Thank you.
Evening, Daniel Coughlin, River Birch Road, Turnersville. First of all, I would just hope you could provide some background information. I know the gentleman just did provide some background information. But is that, they filed an application to change this zone? Okay, gotcha. The reason why governments exist, number one reason why governments exist is for the health, welfare, and safety of their residents. That's it. So I know there's other considerations. I know there's financial considerations. I know there's legal considerations. But when you have to weigh out the priorities, the health and safety of your residents, your constituency, has to always take priority. It's unfortunate that gentleman, has to sort of be embroiled in that a legal lawsuit, but ultimately the question is how this could impact the safety and health of our town. I mean, really there should be a public buffer zone around wellheads. It should be publicly owned property. We should just move to that model and protect those areas. And I guess that, the gist of what we're hearing is that once that is polluted, we can't fix it. We can't fix it. It's too late. It's too late. I mean, obviously, certain remediation can happen. They did a great job when they fixed that pond off of Fish Pond Road. But, as far as those chemicals and pollutants that get into the water, it would be a travesty if they were ingested by members of the public. So we have to protect those areas. So the question is, how do we treat that gentleman fair in whatever he's dealing with, but ultimately, protect that water source from getting polluted? Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, motion to close.
I'll make that,
Good.
I'll make that
Second.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Does council have any comments that they want to add on this? I personally was at the zoning board meeting when their application was in front of it, and it did seem more or less like it was an error in the master plan. But it was 6 or 12 weeks. It was about 12 weeks ago at that meeting, so it's not exactly fresh. Does anybody have any other comments?
I did reach out to the MUA. They haven't objected to this in any way, shape, or form.
Do you want to? It's up to
Can
you.
I make a motion to table this?
I'll second her motion. Now, this is a motion to table.
No discussion on the motion. Please call the roll.
Mr. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
This ordinance is tabled.
Perhaps it should have been in the motion, but we didn't make any notice of when we were tabling it till.
Meeting?
Yeah, it should have been in the motion.
What was this point of order? Would you say it again?
When
sir?
did we table it till?
Next meeting?
Well, it's, right now, it's been tabled, and if it's not taken up at the meeting after the next meeting, within 2 meetings, then it dies. So it would have to be brought back to, somebody would have to untable it at another meeting.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine. I know a lot of the time we just say till the next meeting until a certain time. so
Wasn't
that's
part of the
all.
motion. If somebody wants to revise the motion and do that, they can.
I make a motion to revise the motion so that this will be
Tabled until which meeting?
Tabled till the next meeting.
Which
That's
is,
September 13th?
I'll second his motion.
that is September 13, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So the roll call on that motion.
Mr. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
This ordinance will be considered once again at the next meeting, which is September 13th, 2017, 7 o'clock. At this meeting, there will be no additional notices sent.
Okay. Ordinance 24, 2017. This ordinance is rezoning the property known as Block 117, Lot 1.03, from its current rural zoning to institutional. This ordinance is up to adoption. Do we have a motion open to the public?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're now open to the public on ordinance 24.
Good evening to the members, Mr. Chairman and Mayor. This is an application a request rather to council by Kennedy University Hospital, Kennedy Health System, that the property at 367 Herfield Cross Keys Road, Block 117, Lot 1.02, which was the Crossroads Worship Center, be rezoned from rural to institutional. The members wanted some time to review, and with the technical impact previously, this application now affords the opportunity for the review. The property was for years, if not decades, available there as an institutional use, albeit that the property itself was in a rural, which is a residential zone. The church has entered into an agreement to sell the property. The importance of that is that the acreage location close to the hospital is critical to allow proximity expansion of the hospital. The board is, the council is aware that there is a hospital campus across the street from on Egg Harbor Road, and that type of future planning was determined years, if not decades ago, I think in the late 90s, that anticipated the need for growth. And as a result, that property was available for that growth, and you see the campus has a significant construction on it. And the import of that, in part, is that it also shows you the type and quality of construction that the hospital pursues. The planning board recently, in August 2nd letter to you, recommended the consideration and acknowledged that the recommendation was positive in that the application was appropriate under the master plan. I'll give you a point on that in a moment. In part, I think the council recognizes that Hurstville Cross Keys Road has over the years changed. The intensity of use of the county road is significant. Between Hurstville Cross Keys and Egg Harbor, I think we are creating the medical mile, if not only a half mile so far, and that is an important part of your master plan as well. It may well be a focal point not just for the town but also for the county. The report that came to you, I'm sorry, there's in your packet there should be a plan that shows you the zoning. I have extra copies if you need them. I can pass those around.
Yes, please.
Marked as Exhibit P1 for the record.
Thank you. This is a portion of the. This is a portion of the town zoning map. You'll find in the very middle is the point where Egg Harbor and Hurstville Cross Keys come together, and just above that you'll see an R that is circled, and that is the property. If you will focus to the left side of that exhibit, you'll see that along Egg Harbor Road there is institutional zoning that is significant, and that is the hospital campus. Across the street, Egg Harbor Road, you see that institutional zoning is the hospital itself. As you move to the right on Egg Harbor Road next to the campus, there is a brown zone marked R. That, albeit shown as a rural zone, which is a residential zone, is developed, and it is developed with an existing surgical center and medical office building. So it has an institutional, if you will, use. Next to that, coming toward the point, you see another institutional zone. That zone is the condominium campus of medical offices and similar types of office across the street from the shopping center just down the road here. Next to that You start the brown area of the rural zone again, and the first abutting the institutional zone, that first area is Health Track, of which the hospital is a participant. So functionally, that is, although rural zoned, it is institutionally used. And next to that is the property that we're here before you requesting be zoned to institutional. So the community has developed, and the roadway pattern has developed in a less rural, less residential tone. And I think all of you, being well familiar with that general area and intersection, recognize that it would be difficult, if whether or not appropriate, to put a housing development on these multiple acres, facing with the single access to the county roadway. And I think when that zoning originally occurred, that this area of the community wasn't in the same status. I would remind
Council,
you.
just to point out, we're beyond the 5-minute mark for public remarks. So if you just want to finish up your remarks at this point.
I would, and I thank you for that. I would just point to the August 2nd letter. The 5 points that the Planning Board makes is that there should be a concentration of employment and activity, but most important, it says there's a capitalization upon growing medical needs in the region and the strength of Kennedy Hospital. It's a specific within that context. So with that, fortunately by a different individual, Joe Devine is with me this evening. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the hospital, and because he's the second person, I assume he gets a due clock.
No question about it.
Thank you.
Somebody actually took you to 5 minutes.
They never told me there was that.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Council President, council members, Madam Mayor, Mr. Solicitor, it's always good to see you. Joe Devine, President and CEO of Kennedy Health, and also a 31-and-a-half-year resident of Washington Township, 136 Mimosa Drive, for the record. First of all, I thank you to get the opportunity to speak tonight. I was disappointed to hear what happened at the last meeting. And the reason is because I wasn't here to able to address the concerns. And I understand what happened, and I respect that. Tonight I had the opportunity to meet some of the residents beforehand and discuss some of these concerns with them. A couple things need to be very clear. One, I am a resident here for 31 and a half years. I was the guy who led the charge to make sure that Washington Lake Park was properly placed for our community, with myself and Fred Madden at the time, to make sure that appropriate things were placed so that things weren't close to our community. So I understand the residents' concerns, I do. Second of all, I want to make sure we dispel a few rumors. There is no plans at all for us to build a drug rehab center there. We are not in the drug rehab business. We are in the business of treating healthcare-related people. And yes, we treat people who are addicted post-event in our outpatient centers, one that happens to be in Washington Township already and another one in Cherry Hill. So there was never any plans or never any considerations for us to do that. Second of all, which is most importantly, when I looked at the land, to me, it was an opportunity to develop the land on a continuous basis for healthcare in this region. As many of you may or may not know, within the next month, we will become Jefferson Health System, okay? Which, by the way, if we hadn't done what we did at Washington Township over the years, no institution like Jefferson would ever merge with us to bring top-level healthcare to South Jersey, okay? So our opportunity is to take this look at this land and say, what can we do in the future? I have no definitive plans for that. Right now, as I told the residents, to be candid with you, our immediate need, and the reason we bought it was for the future, but right now, we have people working in trailers outside of our hospital because we don't have enough space. We don't have any educational space. We now go to Lucian's or Camden County College, or every time we need to hold a meeting with more than 50 people. So when I looked at the facility and looked inside, my initial impression is, well, initially, I could use it for office space and use it for educational space. There was even a pulpit there, so I said I could preach once in a while. But kind of candidly, the reality was we wanted to look at something to do for the community. So when we looked at the property, we do think in the future it could be developed something for healthcare. I'm not going to stand here and lie and say we're going to keep that building forever. But as I told the residents, like we've done in Cherry Hill, like we've done here when we built the entire campus across the way and we spoke to the people of Robindale Manor, we will work with the residents before we decide. When those plans come, even before they come to the planning board, we'll meet with the residents and talk about what we're going to do there. There will be no 4 stories hospital towers there. We can't possibly build it. We couldn't afford it. Institutional allows us to do some other types of healthcare-related issues. It could be related to our cancer program. It could be related to our women's and children's maternal fetal medicine program. But it gives us the opportunity to expand our services. And see, we're already adjacent with the Health Tracks building and made it appropriate for us to be part of that campus. I know there were other healthcare providers looking to buy the parcel. I decided it was better for us to buy the parcel because we were part of the community. And candidly, again, as I said to the neighbors, we will work with them. There's no plans at this time. I wouldn't come and say, here's the exact plans, but we'll make sure that the plans we put in place will be something that's conducive and acceptable to them. When we build it, it will not be a 24-hour operation, it will not be a story tower, and it will not create something that's uncomfortable for the community. So I thank you for the time to speak to you tonight, and I'm here to answer any questions if you might have them of me.
Thank you.
All right?
How you doing? My name's Todd Patzel. I live at 110 Bells Lake. And I just wanted to state that the fact is, the last meeting we had, it was like a 3-2 vote. And the main reason was because we don't know what's going to be built there. We still don't know what's going to be built there. That concerns me living there. He says it's not going to be a drug alcohol rehab center, but plans change. We don't know what's going there. I don't understand why we cannot keep it zoned that it's at right now until we know what's going there. Why do we need to do it now? Why can't they rezone it once they figure out what is going there? That's my biggest concern. You know, I've been there for 2 years now. It's my retirement home. I just retired from the Air Force, and it scares me what could go back there. There's nothing in writing that 5 years from now, it could be a drug alcohol rehab center. But that's where I stand. Thank you.
Back again, Dan Coughlin, River Birch Road, Torrensville. So I wholeheartedly support the expansion of Kennedy Hospital, and I also support the idea of just that area becoming a medical corridor. The only issues I have is I would wish they would move the other way into the old Botino's strip mall. You know, how can we... You know, what can we do to attract them to build there? It is good that we just have low impact areas, you know, scattered throughout the towns for obvious reasons, as sort of buffer zones between residential areas and commercial uses. And that's what that's doing right there. So, you know, I get that everyone has in our system of private property the ability to buy and sell what they want. But, I mean, if we're looking at what benefits from us as a town, to move the other way. Give them a tax abatement. They want to build something big into Botino's, you know, and redevelop that whole area or the area behind it, that would be appropriate use for a tax abatement. They want to move the other way, we're going to start taxing you, okay? So you have a lot of power in shaping the way our town plays out by those carrots and sticks. Thank you.
Ralph Campano, 2 Pear Tree Place, Washington Township. I would only be opposed to that. I do not live in that area. I'm opposed to it because of one of the other resolutions that just came up, but that's not the topic right now. The traffic pattern there in the morning, going to the city, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we're putting the apartments in up the road a little further. What are we doing to expand the roads? Are we talking about any extensive infrastructure to try to get traffic moving? Most of the traffic is going towards Philadelphia in the morning, all the apartments that are going to eventually be built and the townhomes, a good portion of them are going to be going in that direction. It's a nightmare now. So now we're proposing the hospital getting this property, and like we were just talking about a little earlier about the other property, it's just going to be more of a traffic nightmare than it already is. That was my biggest concern. And I hope you look into it a little bit closer because it's going to be a nightmare. Plus, we do have that empty property where Botino's was, which it seems like it would be ideal. It's huge. Thank you.
My name is Burton Weiss, 30-year resident of Washington Township. In fact, on 36 Bridge Drive, not far from the property in question, and 37 years in Gloucester County. I'm also a medical psychologist, almost 50 years at university teaching, 31 at Drexel, where I retired from. And it's nice to hear from the CEO of the Kennedy Systems. He may have great intentions at the moment, but tomorrow plans can change. It happens all the time. And Washington Township has a problem with the homes. You have a lot of vacant homes. You have people reluctant to move into the township because it just doesn't favor the residents. And to pass this law, pass this ordinance now, when we don't know what's going to happen, is really putting all those residents in that area in jeopardy. And there's no point in doing that. It was pointed out there's plenty of vacant properties, an enormous number of vacant properties in this township that are available near the hospital. So I think we ought to at least consider this situation of the residents and not try and lower property values even more than they are. Okay.
My name is Pat Cataldi. I live at 15 Birch Grove Lane, so I'm about 3/4 of a mile from the location of where the Kennedy will be trying to buy. My husband and I have been in Washington Township for over 50 years. We bought our house new. And my fear when I heard, quote unquote, the rumors was a security in our home. And when you have that type of a facility, and I know he said, you know, it may not happen, it's not going to happen, but anything can happen in the future. And since we don't know what they're going to do there, that's where our fear comes in. We're an older couple, and to tell you the truth, sometimes I leave my front door open in the morning. And I said to my husband this morning, I won't be doing that if something like that were ever to come to this area. So I'm hoping that we can continue with feeling safe. I call my street Pleasantville because it's so wonderful, quiet, and we just want it to stay that way. Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Andrew Vernot. Apologize to bring her up here with me, but I live at 105 Bells Lake Road. I've only been here 2 years, but I was born and raised in Philly. I know firsthand what a drug clinic could bring to the neighborhood. It's the whole reason I moved to this nice area. And it scares me that if that element is brought back to where I live again, I'll be forced to move again. I know the gentleman promised that it's not going to be zoned for a drug clinic, but like everyone else said, his promise means nothing right now because that could change, especially if they're selling it to Jefferson. What if they plan something different? So the bare minimum it should never be zoned for a drug clinic facility. Whether what they want to do now is irrelevant, but as long as that never is the case, I feel like that's most of our concerns at the moment. Thank you.
I'm Vice President for External Relations for Kennedy Health. I want to be clear because I don't think that perhaps there's an understanding of what Kennedy is considering in this property. It will not be a drug rehab facility. That is not the core business of Kennedy Health. Just to be clear. As far as what would Jefferson do, Mr. Devine has expressed our merger with Jefferson Health will make him an executive at Jefferson. He is Jefferson. He will be Jefferson. Excuse me, my allergies. He is Jefferson. He will be Jefferson. So there's a lot of speculation and rumor. I don't know how much more Kennedy can do to assure the residents we are good neighbors here. We pay almost $500,000 in taxes per year. We provide jobs to residents. We provide quality, nationally recognized health care. What we're looking to do is to bring additional services to the members of this community, services that they may not have to travel outside of the community to get. Health care is an economic engine. It's an economic engine in this town, in this county, and in this region. And a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation are not going to help this town move forward economically. You need to make sure that you're considering all sides of this proposal. Thank you.
Razio. I live on 220 Bells Lake Road. I've lived in Washington Township for 45 years. I also own Lifestyles Tuxedos on the Black Horse Pike, and I pay a lot of taxes. Bells Lake Road used to be very peaceful, and now we hear lots of helicopters from the hospital. We don't want the hospital in the backyards of residents' houses. That lot is right behind, not my house, but probably half of the people in here. Their pools, their kids play right behind that lot. It's a church. That was the purpose of the lot. It wasn't intended to be a commercial lot. Residents of the Birches, Bells Lake Road, have changed because of Kennedy's development on Herfel Cross Keys Road and Egg Harbor Road. You sit in your backyard in your pool, and you hear helicopters going over. It's not quiet Bells Lake Road like it was 30 years ago. Yes, it's great they've developed. They shouldn't be developing closer to residents. They should be developing down Egg Harbor Road or the other way on Herfel Cross Keys where there's commercial areas, but not in the backyards of residents. I mean, we are suffering because of their extensive, development in that area. They shouldn't be in the backyards of residents, period. There should not be a commercial lot behind residents' backyards. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Dan Brown. I live at 104 Bells Lake.
Move the mic up a little closer, sir, that's all. I want to get your comments on the record.
Better?
Yes, sir.
I live at 104 Bells Lake Road. I'm probably the closest property to this house. My children's swing set is 35 feet from the property line. I have had helicopters fly over my house and knock drinks over on my deck with the rotors while I'm sitting at my pool. Yet this house was sold to me with this beautiful backyard and view from the church that would never be changed. She talks about the $500,000 a year she spends in property taxes, but they're a big company. I spend $10,000 a year property taxes for my small lot. That's about double, triple what most of the people are in this room. I was told by a couple of residents who lived there a long time that that property was donated to the church and they don't have the right to sell it. And that if it was to be moved, it was to be given back to the original property owners who donated it to the church. That plot is supposed to be a buffer zone between all of this hospital area and our residential neighborhood on Bells Lake Drive. The portion of Bells Lake Road on the other side of Gantown has speed bumps. My side does not. People come up my street at 50 miles an hour in a 25 zone while my 3 daughters are trying to ride their bike in the street. Do you think another complex right there that people are late to get to an appointment to is going to make that better on my street? I doubt it. How about we get to the animals that live there? I've got 4 or 5 families of red-tailed hawks that live in that entire tree line. I've got 2 families of deer that come through that field and feed every night. I've got 3 families of turkeys that come through there and feed every single night. That church is not meant to be knocked down and turned into more commercial areas that this township is already overrun with. Now, I'm sure the township would love to start collecting taxes on a property that has been tax exempt for 30 years because it's a church. But that doesn't mean that the neighbors want to have to deal with this in our neighborhood, in our backyards, 35 feet from my children's swing set. If I'm lucky, I get the backside of their commercial property that has a driveway filled with medical waste dumpsters and trash trucks coming up at beeping, beep, 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 at 4 a.m. emptying their medical waste. If I'm lucky. That's not what I came here to Washington Township to put my family in that home for. That's not what I was sold. That's not the line they gave me. So I would hope that you all think of my house. If you look at that zoning map, if you look at Google Earth, my house is the closest one to that, except for there's two others that are virtually the same distance because they border it. Also, my neighbor Sal over here, who also borders that property. But I'm 35 feet from that property line. I'm 60 feet from the building. When the straight line winds came through and knocked out power for half a township last year, they ran a cord from that church to my house to keep all my food from going bad so my electricity wouldn't be bad, so that we could have our freezers still kept good. Now, I know the church isn't there anymore, but I don't want a medical compound behind me, lowering my property taxes worse, ensuring that I'll have no chance of selling this home if I choose that I don't want to live there behind a medical compound. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Use up all my 5 minutes.
Hold on, so there's somebody that didn't speak yet that was trying to get up. Never mind.
That's not the rule anyway.
Psychologist, I can tell you that there's an enormous amount of money in drug rehabilitation right now, at federal and state level, and it's getting bigger. It's the in thing right now. There's so much money. We appreciate what the officials from Kennedy said, but there's so much money, there's enough money to change their mind by noon tomorrow. So keep the residents in mind for a change.
Bruce Salvatore, 114 Bells Lake. I have to reiterate what my neighbor said. The residents that live along Bells Lake, there's 7 of us in particular, among other people that I have spoken to. The general consensus is we do not want Kennedy Hospital, Jefferson Hospital, whatever they're going to call themselves, expanding to our back fences, to our property lines. It's entirely too close. The church was in fact a buffer zone for us. It was a very big part of why I chose the particular lot that I purchased some 22 years ago, have been paying taxes. My taxes are always on time. I do have a say as a taxpayer. We all have a say as a taxpayer, as taxpayers. Also, to touch on the helicopter thing, helicopters fly over our houses, sometimes so low that our houses shake and vibrate. This is not an exaggeration. Prior to the helipad being where it presently is, it used to be on, I believe, the roof of Kennedy Hospital. We didn't have that problem whatsoever. I mean, I understand progress, but this is not the type of progress that is behooving us as child-rearing neighbors and citizens of Washington Township, particularly if you've got the back of your property, where ours happen to be. The noise and it's just gotten to a point where it's akin to city living, and I didn't move to the suburbs, for more noise. I like peace and quiet, and we're certainly not going to get that if Kennedy extends its boundary. Thank you so much.
Motion to close to the public.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We just closed to the public, ma'am. I'm sorry. Ma'am?
I'll make a motion to open back up for.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're back open.
Catherine Schwartz. I live on Bells Lake Road. My husband and I have been there for 49 years. When we moved here, it was so rural, peach trees, gardens, beautiful. That property has been, people have been trying to change the zoning on that property for the 49 years we've been here. We fought to stop apartments. We fought to have condos not built there. We fought to have townhouses not to be built there. And finally, we have a row of homes, custom-made homes, with beautiful homes, beautiful lawns, and now they want to change the zoning to make it what? More cars? How many cars go in and out of the hospital a day? 300 in, 300 out, constant, day. Kennedy's all over the place. Cars going in and out, in and out. We need something that is kept rural there, and we don't want to see any kind of expansion or changing the zoning. Why would they change the zoning for anybody to come in there? We don't want to change. That's the basic thing. We don't want to change. We want to live where we live. We do put up with the helicopters. We do put up with the cars, but we're done. We don't need to put up with anything else.
Motion to close to the public.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council, a motion to take a short recess so we can do the proclamations from the mayor. Anyone? Second that?
Can we finish this and then?
Do you have to leave?
Yeah,
No.
I'm gonna finish this.
Oh, okay. You do have to go?
After that, yeah.
All right.
What are we doing?
Discussion.
Well, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean,
Or do you want to make a motion?
No, I'm gonna have comments. Does anybody else?
So I have a few comments. Dan and a few other people have said, why don't they move the other way? Why don't they go buy Bettino's? Well, I mean, just to be fair, Bettino's isn't for sale. I think that's a great idea too, but it's a rental property and that person has no plan on selling that property. So, and being that the traffic's all very difficult there, sure, yes, it is. Infrastructure improvements could be made. For that lot, I don't know that it would get that much traffic, but in rural, I believe it does allow for permanent farm markets, riding academies, nursery schools, daycare centers, kennels. All those things could be just as problematic as whatever Kennedy's going to put there. It is nice to hear from the CEO. Excuse me.
Don't call out, please.
A lot of people afraid of drug clinics, helicopters. I'm pretty sure a helipad is not a permitted use in this zone. We do have the helipad. That's something else. Kenny has a few people here. I'd reach out to them. I'd be more than happy to be that impetus to get you to talk to them and get that squared away for you. As far as the speed humps go, somebody brought up speed humps. Another thing that we could talk about. That's not going to really weigh too heavily on my decision here one way or the other, but we had our traffic engineer. I'd love to get in touch. Maybe we can do a speed study, and we'll see if we can square away that issue you're having as well.
I have a couple comments.
Just let me finish real fast, and then you can go. So right now, if this was to be redeveloped, this is going to come up back to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Solicitor, this will come back to the planning board. Right now, some of these homes, their properties are sitting right against the fence lines of your homes. That parking lot's way over, right on the fence line, not even 10 feet. So if this was to be redeveloped, there would be the potential to put an even larger buffer zone between anything that happened there. That would be the planning board's prerogative.
Yeah, the setbacks, all the setbacks and site plan requirements that would go with this zone would apply. So obviously, the more intense the use, the larger the setbacks, the larger the buffers, and larger. So there's a whole host of zoning requirements that would go with that. And just to add to that point, just so nobody leaves here, no matter what happens tonight, the hospital could always go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment seeking a use variance if this ordinance doesn't pass. And anybody can always go to a zoning board in any town for a use variance. So I just wanted to note that for the record as well. We mentioned the last time. So what this board is doing or up for consideration is the rezoning of the property. But yes, if it was rezoned, if this ordinance was adopted, the larger setbacks, the larger buffers, and all the other things that go along with this type of use in the institutional zone would be required.
And also in the rural district, housing is permitted already. So this going institutional would forbid any housing going in there.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, for my comments, I really find it hard to believe and concerning that successful company like Kennedy that did in fact attract Jefferson has no strategic plan. I'm kind of uncomfortable voting for the unknown. So that's where I stand. Yeah, sure. I said I find it hard to believe and concerning that a successful organization like Kennedy that did in fact attract Jefferson to them has no strategic 5-year plan. And it's concerning for me and I don't feel comfortable voting on that unless I have, some answers to what it could possibly be.
Council, does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, just that, I appreciate Mr. Devine's presence here and his presentation. He answered a lot of questions that I didn't have. I know that I didn't have answered at the previous meeting when this was up for discussion, just to clarify for some of the residents, and also to clarify for some of the residents that if this votes through, that there will be another time for them to speak on behalf of this once it gets approved by the planning board. Is that correct?
They would have to make application to the planning board for a change of use or to devote it to the use that's would be permitted, and that's a whole process of public hearings, applications, and reviews.
And on the residents' end, I live on Lupus Lane, and I back right up to Archway School. So if you're familiar with that, there's school buses and vans driving down my street every night, all times of the evening. So I understand it's a pain. It's very frustrating. So I do understand on your end as well. I think it's a very difficult decision on council's part to make this decision. But at the end of the day, I think that with Kennedy having to go to planning and the residents will be able to be heard once again. I'm not sure what the plan is exactly for them to build. And I know that is very uncomfortable for a lot of people as well. So that's all the comments I had.
All right, thank you, Council. Joe, good? All right, we're going to make a motion. I'll make the motion to adopt Ordinance 24. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
No.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
The motion passes.
That's it, guys. Sorry, motion passes.
Go ahead.
Make the recess.
We're going to do it.
Yeah, we're going to have a short recess so the mayor can do some proclamations. Thank you, everyone.
We're going to recess and then do the proclamations. We're going to do the proclamations.
Do the proclamations.
No
Yeah, we're not taking a recess.
Oh, I guess no. I was just saying, take a break. Yeah. All right, Jake.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, my phone's going to die.
Okay. Okay, Council. You have a good time?
That was easy.
So I'll just read one and then hand two to both of them. So it would be for both of them because I'm going to mention.
That's going to be louder. You're meaner. Yeah, it's going to be a long meeting.
Good evening. Can I have Laura, Rohana, and Amy and Ever with their families up here today? Thank you.
Sorry to say that. I kind of wish.
So this evening we have a proclamation to give to these two families here, which have come up with a fantastic idea for our residents and our children in Washington Township. When I initially started to see the feed come through on Facebook, I didn't quite understand what was happening with Township Rocks. It intrigued me, myself. I have older children, so for me, I would love to sit and just be able to paint a rock and put it out there and just have someone go out and find that for me. I just fell in love with the idea. And the more I read about it and the more I heard about it, the more I wanted to meet both of you, to bring this into this big community that we have here. And during the summer, when we all know that it's sometimes trying to get the kids, you know, get them a little occupied during the summer and get them involved in things. Having the children be creative, get together, see their friends that they don't necessarily get to see during the course of the summer, and then be able to post and see how proud they were of the art project that they put together and put out there for the community. So with that being said, we did decide to put a proclamation together for the two families just because of that. I think that's a beautiful thing to have in the community, getting the children out there, getting them out from inside and amongst each other, and really learning, expressing themselves, and feeling good about themselves. So what we decided to do was to put the proclamation together, which I'm just going to read to you, and I have one for each of you. Today we find our youth and even adults are glued to their cell phones, tablets, and computer. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services National Health Institute has declared childhood obesity a public health crisis in the United States. In the past 30 years, children obesity has more than doubled among children ages 2 to 5, has tripled amongst youth ages 6 to 11, and has more than tripled among adolescents 12 to 19. Recognizing this new challenge facing our youth, integrating technology devices and getting youth outside and physically active, two local Washington Township parents got involved. They created a Facebook page, hashtag Township Rocks, to join the new activity sweeping the country. The challenge is to find a rock, paint it, mark the bottom with Township Rocks, and then hide it somewhere. Post a picture of where it is or just a picture of the rock and clue where to find it in the township. Someone will search for it, find it, and post a picture of it on Facebook page that they found it. They will then decide to keep it or hide it again with a new clue. Just 2 rules: keep it family friendly and tag the back of the rock. Your rock can even travel to places outside of Washington Township. The 3rd rule: have fun. 2 parents, Laura Rohana, hairstylist, and Amy and Ever, computer program analyst by day, mothers and parents all year long, saw a challenge facing our youth today and found a solution. They took the initiative to step forward, creating a positive family-friendly activity, integrating today's technology with the physical activity, helping to get our youth healthy. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Joanne Gattinelli, Mayor, and the Township Council of Township of Washington, Gloucester County, recognize their efforts and dedication to increasing our youth's activity. I further proclaim Laura Rohana and Amy and Ever as parents and citizens of our township community as star citizens of the Township of Washington, Gloucester County. Thank you very much. We have a rock that was also made that we're going to be hiding tomorrow in a historic area. So stay tuned.
Do you want to stand there? You want to stand there? You want on this one?
Get that rock.
Ready for it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hope to see you out there, okay? Thank you so much.
Stewart, keep her in the
Thanks.
I'm gonna make that mistake. Thanks, Frankie.
Oh, thanks.
You actually can get rid of it totally if you like.
Business administrator fail.
We'll have a Jason move it back.
Very nice presentation, Mayor.
Oh, thank
you.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get back to business. Ordinance 25, 2017. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 260, Vehicles and Traffic on Private Property. This ordinance is up for introduction. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Pasqualone?
She has left the meeting.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
By the way, I think that Councilwoman Pasqualone wants to try to rejoin the meeting on her phone at some point, so when that occurs, we'll get that hooked up.
Okay. Ordinance 26, this is an ordinance, 2017, this is an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 15, Section 261D, regarding the environmental resources inventory. This ordinance is up for introduction. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Ordinance 27, 2017, ordinance amending Chapter 260, vehicles and traffic, no parking on certain streets. Is that how it's supposed to read, Leo?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This ordinance is up for introduction. Do you have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Move on to resolutions. Resolution R253, 2017, resolution requesting approval of revenue and appropriations from the Department of Community Affairs for the 2016 Emergency Management Performance Grant in the amount of $9,400. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution R254, 2017.
Can we make a motion to move resolution 254 to 260? 260?
259.
Second.
Or
Are we-
259, my bad.
Second that.
259?
Yep. So it's a motion to move resolution 254 through 259. And we have a second from Councilman Longfellow. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes to all.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
All motions passed from 254 to 259.
Resolution 260, 2017 is a resolution awarding a contract to local IT and Security LLC company for managed computers services for the Washington Township Police Department. Do you have a motion?
I'll
I'll
make
make
the
the
motion. Oh, I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 261, 2017 is a resolution canceling
Can we
taxes.
do move resolution 261 to 264?
This is a motion to move resolution 261 to 264. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes to all.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
They are passed from 261 to 264, all are passed.
And 265 to 268 are all about performance bonds. There is one, the liquor license in the middle of that, if you want to move all those as well.
Okay. I'll make the motion for 265 to 268.
This is a resolution to move 265 through 268. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes to all.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. We'll do separate, I think. Resolution 270, resolution awarding a contract FY 217 NJ Dot Trust Fund Reconstruction of Stagecoach Road Phase 2. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 271, 2017 is a resolution awarding a contract for FY 216 CDBG Grant Lantern Lane Improvements. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Sorry. Council, move on to old business. New business. Reports. Angela?
Well, you know, it's messed up.
You always have a report. That's a good thing.
First, I just want to report, since we haven't met in all of August, I just wanted to say congratulations to Chief Gersick on National Night Out. It was a very successful night. I think one of the most successful national nights out that Gloucester County has seen in a really long time, I would say. I know it's a bold statement, but there was a huge turnout. It was an incredible night, a great canine demonstration. There was helicopters, and it was just a really nice event. A couple other things was that on Saturday, September 9th, there is a Center for Family Services walk and a 5K run at the park. For more information, you can contact Lisa Collins. Just a reminder that our school starts on Wednesday, so to just keep your eyes peeled and watch the school buses. Traffic patterns will be changing, and I know the mayor will touch more on that. Councilwoman Pascalone and I had met with the zoning officer this morning to discuss for the EDC processes and just for businesses to open up in Washington Township or residents to get certain things. So we met to talk about some processes and fees and things like that to try to make Washington Township a little bit more business friendly, as I should say, I guess, and that the RFP for the economic development consultant is going out tomorrow. So you should look out for that. And those are all my reports.
Okay, the Washington Township VFW is running a trip to Gettysburg on September 16th, and proceeds from the trip are going to benefit one of the local veterans, Harry Lucas, who was a Navy vet and was a bus driver for the school district. The fee for the trip is $69. There's a whole load of things that are covered it. You can get in touch with Bob Abbott, who is taking charge and running this trip. That's all I have.
Yeah, real fast. One of the things that was on here was an environmental resource inventory ordinance for the first reading. We actually just completed one here in Washington Township, thanks to Vic DiBenetti, the Environmental Commission, and some of the other folks. It will be available online when we have the final version. We'll get it up on the township's website, and it's an interesting resource. There's a display in the front of the building here with a bunch of different maps, and we talked about wellhead protection areas and open space and things of that nature. There's a lot of unique information for residents to check out on that, so just look for it.
I have it saved in my computer under the Vicky ordinance.
Yes.
I'm sure there'll be more of them to come.
Yes, there are. Well, no doubt. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
See, I wasn't alone.
I got one thing. It's more a question for Jason. Do we have a risk management consultant that we use for the town right now?
Yes.
Okay. There's your answer.
Yeah. So was somebody assigned that, or did we go out to bid?
You did
Or
that.
did it reorganization?
You did a reorganization.
Yeah,
sir.
I remember something about it. I just wasn't sure if there was an actual person to it, or is it a company doing it?
It is a person who's part of a company, an insurance risk manager.
So they come in, and I guess we had to go out to bid for it.
We went out for RFPs.
Yeah.
But under that particular case,
Connor Strong.
it's not
Yeah.
required for
Okay.
us to do an RFP because they are unique in a sense. So it's legal for us to just go back to Connor Strong, and we knew that.
All right.
And that's what we did.
No, that's all I had. Thank you. Anyone else?
One more. Just like to say thank you to Ernie Durazio and Brian McCaffrey, Public Works Department. We had our second auction of the year. It netted $9,050. So just more money getting rid of old, obsolete equipment. So thank you, guys.
Great job.
That's great. Mayor?
Just wanted to wish everyone a safe school year. We're upcoming next week, and we are going to have more police presence out there. And just be safe out there. Be mindful of the speed limits, and the children that are out there, they're going to be out there early in the morning and in the afternoon. We just want to make sure that everybody's safe. Thank you.
All right. We're going to motion to open to the public. And make the motion. Anyone second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. We're now open to the public.
Good evening, everyone. Robert Davis from Saddlebrook Drive in Sewell. And I have a question basically three-part, but it has to do with the same thing. Number one, where you say notices in court in accordance with all the requirements, and you say that you're going to have these meetings in, where is it, Camden County, at the Courier Post and the South Jersey Times. Well, I believe every member of Washington Township got an email a few weeks ago talking about a website called Nextdoor. And this Nextdoor, it's where people can say, oh, I lost my dog yesterday. If anybody finds it, do this, do that. People are complaining about the trash company that has recently taken over from Waste Management. Somebody else asked about their street. They want to make it a no truck zone, and they were asking how to do that. And people are also asking about, oh, my street is supposed to be repaved. Does anyone know when it's going to be repaved? And there's some classified stuff in there also. And I respond to those people. I tell them, why don't you come here to the town council meeting? But I don't know what streets are going to be repaved. The person who was asking about the trash collection, she said she didn't like the trash collection. She had 100 replies just from in this Nextdoor. I can't answer. I don't have a dog in that race. But I think someone either from council can either answer her, or maybe the police department or public works or something like that. I would like to see at least council have some kind of site, or not site, but ID that the council could respond to those questions and maybe help those people with those questions. All I do is say, come here to council meeting and get them answered. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yeah, that's all.
Ralph Campana, 2 Pear Tree Place, Sewell. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the mayor and the business manager for the article I read in the Washington Times today. That's a great idea to try to get people to spend their money in the township. Can you hear me? I don't brag, but I tell a lot of people in the businesses that I spend money with, I said, you know what? I try to spend my money in the township. I try to. I'll pay a little bit more, and I'm sure there's other people that do. I'm not patting myself on the back, to try to give the small business, not even the big box stores, to give the small business the opportunity to get my business. And a lot of times their service is better. But the idea is good. I don't know where it's going. I know it's in the early phase, but I think that's a great idea. I mean, to try to get people to spend the money, to stay in the township, because you've heard me speak about it before. If you forgot, I'll bring it up again. We have all the shopping centers that are empty. I hope we're doing something to try to get some of the empty shopping centers filled. I had bumped into an article on the internet a few days ago involving a new business that came into Egg Harbor Township, and we brought this up before. They gave them a partial tax abatement for like a year. Now, I know the township needs the revenues. They don't want to be giving the money away. But maybe if there was some incentive for the strip shopping center owners and say, look, you get somebody in there, we'll give you 3-4 months taxes, tax break, and you can push it on to your potential leasee, put them in there and maybe save them money and give them a little head start. It's got to get these small businesses. The big businesses will come in. Look what Verizon did. They built that in 3 weeks. It's just amazing how the big businesses will come in, but the little ones. And last but not least, we spoke about this also with a lot of the vacant homes. Has the township taken any homes and actually condemned any of them? Because there's some of them that I've seen that look bad from the outside. I wasn't in them. But they look pretty bad. I'm just wondering if there's any way we can push forward some of these empty properties, because it doesn't seem like they're moving the way they should be, I guess. And that's really it. Thank you.
Yeah, I got a abandoned home in Birches. It looks positively medieval. It has a sod roof at this point. I mean, it almost looks like you could get National Geographic out to take pictures of it, because I've never seen one. In, like, you know, especially when there's every house is like real nice, and then there's just this like monstrosity. I mean, if there's any of that cleanup ordinance, I'll give you the address afterwards. I know you're sick and tired of hearing about the salary ordinance. That's probably the point that I'm trying to make, maybe, because you could have put that baby to bed a long time ago if there was just a little more receptiveness to some of the concerns there. Mayor, I read your article in the paper, and first of all, I want to say I appreciate certainly your attempt to have this open dialogue with the town. It's a good quality. I certainly encourage that. But I got the gist of the article sort of like, don't worry, folks. We're not seeking to raise salaries. This is a perfunctory routine thing that we need to do. We're not seeking to raise taxes, and I certainly appreciate those sentiments. But in the end, it comes down to, then why not just leave it alone? Like if it was, you know, and basically that's what many council members even expressed, that this is not the time to fight this. This is not the time to get in the weeds on this. When the salaries are actually submitted, that's when we'll really get down to the nitty gritty and hammer that all out. Right now, this is no big deal. And, you know, so that, again, that argument could have went back on its head, that if it's no big deal, why didn't we just leave it alone? You know, Councilman Longfellow was really the only one who said, you know, specifically why he felt it needed to change. That we need to attract qualified residents, and the current salary range wasn't going to do that. And I appreciate that. I mean, I like to have that, you know, hear that dialogue, hear that discussion. But in the end, it just came down to that it didn't sound like you were receptive. And I'm not saying you aren't. And, you know, and that's what, so this issue morphed into something bigger. It started out concerns about cronyism and transparency, and then it morphed into just this bigger issue of responsiveness. And I want to start from the outset. I don't think there was any cronyism. I certainly don't have no evidence of that. And I don't think that, you know, was a motivating factor. But the optics of it was the concern. A new mayor coming in, you know, putting in her people, raising salaries. You know, and you could see why people would have concerns about that. Again, I don't think there was anything inappropriate there. I just saying the optics of it. And it could all went to bed because you didn't think it was that big of a deal, really, anyway. And, you know, you could have just left it alone and then follow Councilwoman Pasqualone's advice to, you know, raise salaries the following year. It seemed like everybody would have went away pretty happy. But now we have like almost this lingering resentment. And I get the idea that it could be political attacks, politically motivated attacks, personal attacks. You don't have to tolerate personal attacks. None of you have to tolerate personal attacks. And certainly Mr. Fazio should gavel them down and not even give them, you know, wings in here. Political attacks, though, guess what? You don't have the luxury to really ignore the other side. If you look at our voting records in this town, we are overwhelmingly independent. I know everybody says, oh, we're a Democrat-controlled town, and there's a slight, you know, majority there. But in reality, independents over and over sway this town. Republicans, as this council membership shows, Republicans and Democrats can both get elected in this town, you know. And so no one, and I'm not saying anybody in particular, but you can't afford to even ignore the other side. You can't. You don't have that luxury. I'm not saying you would anyway. I'm just saying that you don't have that base to just, even if it's a political attack, you have to address their valid concerns. You don't have to address, even if it's politically motivated, the question is, do they have a good argument? That's it. Doesn't matter what the underlying motive or intent is. Now, getting into the specifics of the referendum, this is where I was confused. Reading the article in the newspaper, I saw that it said 15%, 5% of registered voters in this town. Is that, so I'm going to direct that question to our town clerk. Is that correct? Was that the criteria? 5% of registered voters in this town. Now, first of all, you know that obviously citizens wouldn't have those numbers just on the top of their head. Even if they wanted to crunch the numbers, Google them or whatever, they still couldn't do it. They would have to get those numbers from the county.
Daniel, we have the 5-minute rule still in place, so.
You should have a timer up here so I would know that. You know what I mean? I don't really have, to know, how do I know it's not 4.5 minutes, you know what I'm saying?
No, you're right.
So, I mean,
But I'm
you
just
got to
trying
have a timer.
Ask your question real quick, and then.
Well, okay. So, because the municipal charter law says 15% of the last voters in the General Assembly. Okay, but in the newspaper, it said we were using 5% of registered voters in the town, which could be, as you know, an altogether different number. So I'd like to get clarity on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Lou, you want to answer that while it's fresh?
We're going to wait till after public portion's over.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rick Eckert, 25 Renfield Drive. Just a clarification now, I guess back to 23, the ordinance that we tabled this evening? So we have now a 9/13 date where this will be, will come back for adoption again, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in between, it doesn't give us much time, so in between, I mean, my suggestion was, and I'm hoping part of why you guys tabled it was to consider that, was to, to engage the community, engage the MUA, to get, a little bit in the game with folks. I mean, I'm out here this evening because, a bunch of folks, particularly in Crofton Run, are very interested in how this, plays out. And you can understand why. They're virtually right behind it. And other folks that are close by. So, to me, I mean, I can certainly be a liaison to set up a meeting if one of you guys wants to grab the ball on that. We don't have a lot of time. It's a tough time of year. A lot of people on vacation, all those sorts of things. But I can certainly make an effort to do that. And I think Vicki could probably coordinate with the Environmental Commission and the MUA and just make sure everybody has really thought this through, because I think it's really important. Take out of the mix, the Royal Farms proposal, because, that may not even be what we end up talking about. But we make this whole thing CI, and you really do open up a can of worms. I mean, there's a whole lot of possibilities that then end up on that property that really just, at least in my opinion, do not belong in that area, and certainly with the wellhead issue making that even worse. So, I'll put that out there. I mean, I'm open to helping you guys coordinate a meeting if we want to do that, but I just want to see, I'd like to see something happen in the 2 weeks in between, if at all possible, so that we're really informed before anybody makes this decision next time around, if we only have 2 weeks to work with.
Thank you. Motion to close to the public?
Make that motion.
All in favor? Aye. So Ralph had asked a question that I wanted to answer. We're giving an opinion, really, for tax abatements. There's not, I don't remember a time being up here that we haven't given anybody who applied a tax abatement and said no to them. The only ones that actually came in were a storage center on Delsey Drive, obviously the pilot. They got they got a pilot program over on next to Virtua. I believe there was one more. I can't remember. Now, maybe it's kind of corny, but as far as advertising goes for the town, yeah, the town could hire somebody that might be able to coordinate with the Economic Development Board. They're kind of in the process of getting an identity down for the town. At my last meeting that I attended, I know you've been to the more recent ones, but they got to get the identity. They got to get it down on paper. They might need a point person inside the municipal building. They can't push it all on Jason. He's got his duties. Maybe it's got to be somebody else. But, something simple is like getting a billboard maybe on the pike and saying, come to the municipal building, apply for an abatement. something stupid. You know, that might work. I don't know. I mean, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm driving through a town, I want to open up something small. You know, I'm already a business owner. I want to do something else, try it out. And I ride through and I see that sign. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to stop in the municipal building and start a conversation up. So it's an option. It's not the best one, but something like that, you know. I wouldn't be against the billboard. This is what I'm trying to say. And as far as the homes go, they do get fined and penalized. Abandoned homes and, you know, disparaged properties. I don't think we can condemn them. I'm not sure about that because as long as the taxes are being paid, you can't really touch the property.
Well, there's some we're currently looking into not foreclosing on. What's the word I'm looking for?
Well, there's a difference
Eminent
between...
domain?
No.
No.
There's a difference between, I think, putting a house on the abandoned property list, and I think the concept is not the word condemn, but to demolish. If any structure, quite frankly, represents a imminent threat of harm to the public, of imminent collapse or failure, there's a whole process that you go through to demolish that house. You have to give the owner notice and so forth. So part of what our housing inspector does is deal with that issue. So if there's a particular house that's fallen to such a bad state of disrepair that it has to be taken down, there's certain due process rights to the owners and to the mortgagees, giving them notice. They get sort of 10 days to deal with that issue. You have a hearing if they usually don't come to the hearing, and then the construction official can issue an order to demolish. So there's a process and a procedure, but homes that are, or any structure in the imminent stage of failure can actually be demolished. Condemnation's another issue.
Just to continue on there, I think you're talking about like mini abatements for someone who already owns property and who's getting somebody in there, Ralph. I'll look into what Egg Harbor Township's doing. It's an interesting thing. It's crossed my mind. I've never really had a good plan for it. New construction, fair enough. Okay. Robert Davis, sir, you mentioned Nextdoor. I'm on Nextdoor. I try not to post too much on Facebook or Facebook and all those because it just sets off a firestorm usually when people get into it. I know myself and everybody up here.
What is Nextdoor?
It's like it's a Facebook for your neighbors. We'll call it that.
Okay.
But I answer every email I get. If you want to put my email out there, I'd be more than happy to get it. I can't get on every social media. Nobody can check all that. Our emails are all readily available on the township website. And for people who can't come here, I'd absolutely love to either have a meeting or exchange over email. There's a lot of issues that go on in this town, trash being one of them, and it's something that we are trying to rectify as soon as possible. So that's that.
Yeah, our numbers are posted out there. The email addresses are posted, and we do receive an awful lot of phone calls and emails during the course of a day, and we do get back to our residents.
Yeah.
So feel free.
Daniel had a question about something with the salary ordinance. I don't know if you can answer that.
Yes, the resident that filed the application to have a petition and have it reconsidered to be put on the ballot filed it under the proper state statute, which stated that it was 5% of the total registered voters in Washington Township. So that is to answer your question. You thought that it was 15%. That's not correct. The appropriate statute that he filed under was 5% of the total registered voters. Had nothing to do with the voters of an election, total registered voters at that time.
And Wellhead, do we want to have a meeting? And I'll put out my opinion on this. I was at the zoning board meeting when they were there. I know you were there too, Vicki. It was a long meeting. It was drawn out. Now, from where I sat and my perspective of it, it seems to me like there was a mistake on the drawing where that line was cut off too short and it should be CS zoned. Now, I'm not against them going there. I'm really not. But, if you want to have a meeting, we can do it. We can set a date now. And you explain to me why they can't go there. You got to point out the wellhead. You got to point out to me why it's bad, and all the detail you want. All right, I'll give you 3 hours of my time. All right, just for you. All right, now I'm going to start spitting out some dates. You can nod your head if they work, and everybody else can join in if they want to as well.
Is this a meeting for the council?
No, this is going to be a meeting, I don't know, whoever wants to. It's not a formal meeting whatsoever.
2 members can go without having.
Just 2 of us can be there. Anybody else want to go?
Schedule a meeting and we'll work that out.
We'll
Why don't you
work
do it
out who's going to
offline?
be there.
Do it offline with them.
Yeah. But, you know, we'll set it up. We'll post it somewhere on the website when we're going to have it. Make it easy for everybody.
Make sure Mr. Eckert is invited to that meeting.
I know
Could you
he
leave
wants to
your
be there.
Email with somebody or phone number? Thank you.
Vicky's got my number, don't worry. He can.
Dan just shouted out as well. If he had the statute, it's 48:9-165.
Council, you have any other comments? All right. We're going to move on to executive session. Resolution 269, 2017, resolution authorizing executive session for litigation with Carmen and attorney-client matter, former business administrator. Do you have a motion?
I make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So how long do you anticipate?
Half hour.
About 30 minutes, and there may be legal action taken after the executive session.
Make a motion to come out of closed.
Resolution.
Motion to come out of closed session?
Make that motion.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. This resolution doesn't have a number.
It'll be 272, sir.
Resolution 272, 2017,
Read by title if you would.
resolution authorizing the township solicitor to take legal action against the former township business administrator. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Roll call.
Councilwoman Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make
that
the motion.
motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's over.
Do that.
Wednesday.